Aloha, my name is Kevin Akana, and I'm a missionary to the Hawaiian Islands. I'm also from here. I was born and raised in Hawaii. And so I was asked by Angelica Torres, Grant Patrick, and Clemencia de Jesus or de Jesus, I'm not sure. In fact, my mother's maiden name is de Jesus. That's how they pronounce it. And 50% Portuguese. So I have that. That's my mother's maiden name. So I don't know if you pronounce it de Jesus or de Jesus. But anyway, so I was asked by three people, so I figured I'd do one video, and then you could share it. And some of the questions I'll give different answers because there's different stories that I could tell. And I guess I don't know if you're able to discuss this amongst yourselves, but I'm gonna just send this one video to everybody, and then that way you could share the information. But so I'll go through the questions. It might not. It's not going to be in the same order that you asked it, but the first question is how God called you to missions. Well, just to give you a brief testimony, when I was saved, if you've ever heard of the Power Team came to our public school and they did all the feats of strength. You know, they broke bricks and boards. They had a weightlifting contest. They did all of this during the, well, actually, they didn't do the weightlifting contest during the day. They did that at night, but they did this during the day, and they had all the public school. The public school had an assembly. We watched them do this. But then they invited everybody to come during the evening. And that evening, they had a weightlifting contest, and I was interested in that. And they were also doing more feats of strength, like ripping phone books and license plates and breaking bricks, things like that. And then they also preached the gospel at the end. They gave some of them gave their testimony. The main speaker gave the gospel presentation. I was raised Catholic, and I always was wondering how I could make it to heaven. That was on my mind. But I never heard a clear presentation of the gospel. So I heard it that night, and I received Jesus Christ into my life. At least I thought I did. And so I didn't go forward. But anyway, so I already had made that profession of faith. Well, I actually not. I mean, I just said the sinner's prayer, basically, received Jesus into my life best I could, according to the message. And then I never really got involved with the church or anything because I didn't tell anybody. But a while later, I met a friend. He took me to a Bible study. I went there because there's a girl that I liked. One of the reasons that motivated me to go to. So I went there, and after a while, hearing the message, I was hearing different. I was hearing different things from my uncle about. He was involved with a cult, and I was kind of listening to what he was saying, and so I was getting influenced by him. But with this organization called Youth for Christ, I went to their Bible studies, and I ended up. It made more sense to me. And so I ended up getting this discipled by one of the people there. And then they brought me to a church, which brought me to another church, because I had a coach also that was going to an independent Baptist church. And then once I went to that church, that's when the Lord really spoke to me. And then I remember really getting serious. So if I wasn't saved, and may not have been, I'm not sure, but I really got serious. And driving back home from church one day, I got serious and I received Jesus Christ into my life. And I believe that probably was the time that I got saved. And I was real serious about it. I received Jesus into my life to get assurance. And then I got baptized in that church. It's called Windward Baptist Temple. And then I surrendered to preach in that church. I felt the Lord calling me to preach. And I ended up going to Bible school at Oklahoma Baptist College. And while I was there, there was a speaker named Bud Calvert. He preached at a missions conference. And I was not certain if the Lord wanted me to come back to Hawaii. I didn't know what he wanted me to do. I know I wanted to pastor a church. I know I wanted to be involved with church planning, but I did not know where at the time. And then when after Bud Calvert preached, I surrendered to go wherever God wanted me to go, anywhere. That's when God called me to come back home to Hawaii. I felt it in my heart to come back. I knew for certain. I never doubted it since. And so I came back to the place where I grew up, and I wanted to reach my friends and family. And I was able to do that to a certain extent, but for the most part, a lot of my family has not responded like I thought they may have. Some of my friends have, and I was able to reach some of them. And so we established Windward Baptist Church on October 29th, 1995. My wife and we came back. Well, after Bible college, we went on deputation. We raised support. And it's hard to raise support to come to Hawaii. Even though you're from here, it was difficult. A lot of people laugh at that, which out of ignorance. There's a tremendous need here. Independent Baptist churches had not done much here. Anyway, so we came back here and we started Winter Baptist Church, and on the side of the island I grew up, and we established a church, and so that's how God called me to missions. I know, kind of long story, but second thing is how a new supporting church contacted you. If churches would like to support us, they usually contact our mission board. We're with BIMI, Baptist International Missions Incorporated. Sometimes they'll contact me, but since we've been here, we never really took a furlough. We might have took some weeks off. It just I was advised to take long for advised against it because of the I guess the nature of the ministry here, where it's fast paced, and I just never felt the liberty to leave. And when I did seek counsel, I was counseled to just take maybe just weeks at a time, or maybe a month, or maybe a couple months at the most. So we've lost most of our support over the years, but if a church did want to take us on, and that hasn't happened in a while, but they would just contact our mission board normally, BIMI. One of the questions is your most humorous language or culture. Being that we speak English and it's pidgin English, so I didn't really have any problems with that because I grew up with that. It's more of an accent, and it's kind of English in a way mixed together with the different, I guess, language and cultures that are here. For example, like if someone wanted to go to shop at the mall with you, it would be like, "You like go mall?" Like, do you like or want to go to the mall? You like go mall? And then if they want to, they'll say shoots, like, "Yes, I do." Shoots, we'll go. Let's go. We'll go. Or if someone calls, like if they're asking for me at my house and calling me on the phone, well, back then when you had landlines, they'd say, "Kevin, stay home." Is Kevin at home? He stay home. Kevin, stay home. And then the person would answer, "He no stay," like he's not home. So the pidgin accent, if someone's speaking it like fluently or quickly, you wouldn't even think it's English. But anyway, it is. In a way, it's kind of mixture. But so I grew up speaking that, so I don't have any issues with that. But I have more issues with the English language, actually. In fact, when I went to Bible school, people would make fun because when we're finished with something, we'd say "Pow," P-A-U. That's done, finished. So someone would ask me, "Are you finished eating?" I said, "I'm not pow yet." And they would say, "Pow." So there was more of that on the other side. Anyway. So another question, someone asked me about the RAM program. So, and one of the questions was, I believe, the scariest experience on the field. So this kind of goes together. One day I was asked by, or I'm sorry, one day I was called by the medical examiners in the morning. I was called, and they let me know that my father, who struggled with crystal meth, was found dead on King Street, and they wanted me to go and identify his belongings, and that hit me hard. I couldn't respond. I couldn't write down when they were giving me the address. I remember that it just hit me really hard that he had passed away, and just the way they said it to me is real cold, just like a business announcement kind of. So I went to the shower. It was kind of earlier in the morning, and I was taking a shower to get ready to go. And that's when the Lord spoke to me about saying that your father struggles with drugs, and he wasn't able to get the help that he needed, and I know that he needed the Lord. He needed a program that was gonna bring him in and keep him busy with work, not just put him in a classroom all day. He was needed to be treated with respect, and most important of all, he's needed to be taught how to receive the Lord and how to walk in the Lord's will. So I designed RAM to be the type of program he would have needed, and we started that. That day is when the Lord spoke to me. It took us a while to kind of get all our ducks in a row, and then when we did finally start it, we housed our first person. Like, my father died in March 8th, 2004. We housed our first person in 2006, the end of 2006, and we're trying to figure out how to do it or how to get a place and this and that. And we finally just said, you know what, we're trying to organize everything. Let's just go and do it. So we housed our first client at the end of 2006, and we've been doing it ever since 2021. So, we've been doing it from that time period, and we've seen hundreds have come through our program. Many have gotten saved. We house them. We work with them 24/7. They live with us, and we have devotions with them every morning, except Sunday, but they have to be at church. So, and then we have work therapy where we have contracts. We do mostly yards and different things. And people have come into our program, and many have done well. You know, not, obviously not everyone, but we've seen many people receive Jesus Christ. Our church is made up of a bulk of our church is made up of people that are involved with RAM or have been, or people that have struggled with addictions because it's so prevalent in Hawaii. At one point, we led the nation. I don't know if we still do in crystal meth addiction, percentage-wise. A lot of the local Hawaiian people struggle with crystal meth, so that's why we started the program. And our ultimate goal is to teach people how to receive the Lord and how to walk in His perfect will. Bottom line, and then we'll also, of course, help them to get jobs and get their get them on their own 2 feet, supporting themselves, paying their own rent, things like that, and being a productive member of society. But it was a scary thing to when I'd received that phone call. It was one of the most scariest, or I guess times that were most troubling that I've been through. There's a few of those, but that's one of them. Okay, so favorite deputation story. Well, one of the things that was memorable was when we had run out of gas. We were driving from, I think it was where Roxanne is from, Omaha, Nebraska. And we're driving to a meeting in Kansas and went through the turnpike. And so I did most of the driving, but I was getting tired, so I had her drive. And we were going through the turnpike, and I don't know if I mentioned her that we needed gas at some point on a turnpike. And she forgot or whatever. And so when I had got in the car, I didn't check, and so we're driving, and in a car in the middle of nowhere. We took a back roads because we wanted to avoid traffic, and we're in a back roads where hardly any cars are coming, and our car just runs out of gas, and we are 20 plus miles away from the nearest town. And my wife is about 7 or 8 months pregnant. We're gonna go to this meeting, go back to Omaha, Nebraska. She's gonna stay there, and because she was so close to delivery, and I was going to do some meetings down in New York, come back in time for the birth of our first child, Kelsey. So we ran out of gas, and we're on our way to the meeting. Obviously, we're going to miss the meeting now. And 20 plus miles from the nearest town, so I didn't know what to do. So I knew I couldn't just walk and leave her there, walk 20 miles to get gas. I knew that she wasn't going to be able to walk with me. So I got out of the car and I started to push the car. I was going to push the car 20 plus miles. What are you going to do, right? There's hardly any cars coming. We didn't see any cars for a long time traveling on these back roads. And lo and behold, I'm pushing the car for just not even 5 minutes. Having a difficult time because first a little hill. And anyway, so this car pulls up behind us and looks at me, and I look at the person. And it was a woman, and she didn't really want to help me because she didn't know who I was. But she knew that something was wrong. So she asked me from the distance, like, who's with you? And I said, my wife. And she said, let me see her. So Roxanne got out of the car. She saw her. She saw that she was pregnant. And I said, we need help. We ran out of gas. So she told us to come to her car. She took us into the town. We bought a gas can. I think she might even have bought a gas can for us. Got the gas. Drove us all the way back 20 miles. So 20-something miles to the town, 20 miles back. We put gas in and we're on our way. But by the time we got to the church, it was finished. And so, they were, back then you didn't have cell phones and all these ways to get into communication with people. Because this is like 30 years ago when we were on deputation. We started deputation in 1992. Anyway, so it's kind of a funny story in a way. We broke down 3 different times. I don't want to get into all the different stories. There was one time where our engine blew, and I jumped out of the car. Well, I didn't want it to stop because I wanted to push it to the rest stop that was just up ahead. I jumped out of the car. Well, I told Roxanne I'm going to jump out of the car and push it, and I figured it was going about 20 miles an hour. I wasn't sure how fast I could run, so waited till we get to about 15 miles an hour, and I figured, okay, I'll keep the momentum. I jumped out of the car, and it just drugged me. I was holding onto the door and the steering wheel, and Roxanne panicking, and so she turns the wheel to the right so the car doesn't run me over, and the car turned, and she stepped on the brake too, and the car turned into the guardrail. And it stopped, and I was upset. Why did you do that? No, we lost all the momentum. But the car was dragging me the whole time, though, on the side of the road. But things like that happen. Well, hopefully it doesn't, but for us it did. We broke down 3 different times. There was another time that we were coming back from a meeting, and we're going to her house for Christmas, and it was Christmas Eve. They celebrate. Well, it wasn't Christmas Eve, but we were planning to be there for Christmas Eve because her family celebrates Christmas on Christmas Eve, and we're traveling there, and it is about 8 degrees in Colorado, part of Colorado, super cold, and our car just dies on the highway. And guess what? We're about 20 miles from the town, so we didn't know what to do, and it was super bitter cold, 8 degrees, and we didn't really have any money on us. Back then, it was sometimes the bank machines didn't work; they weren't synchronized like they are today. If you have a card, it might work, and none of mine was working in most of the places we've been. So we just had enough gas to get to enough next gas station. Probably had enough gas for another. Gas was cheap back then, and then we were gonna make it to her house, but we broke down, and so there's a car behind us. It was weird. The car just pulled up behind us, and they're like flashing their lights at us. So I ran to the car, and I had a big jacket on, and they're looking at me, and they're kind of panicking. It was an elderly couple, and they just think, who's this crazy person running at our car? And I'm freezing. So I run to the car and I asked them what's wrong, and they said our lights aren't working, but they're afraid. And I said, I need a ride to the town. Our car broke down. And they said, who's with you? And I said, my wife. And they said, okay, we'll meet you over there. So they drove their car to our car, and they wanted to see. Thankfully, I had my wife with me. They would not have helped me, because I guess I look like a nut. But she got out of the car. They saw her, and they got us to a town. We didn't have any money. We didn't have enough money for the hotel. We had just barely enough. Back then, some hotels are cheaper. I forget what, like $29 a night, or some of the cheap hotels that was there. And we didn't have enough, so I begged them to let us stay. And they let us stay. They let us stay that night, and we were hungry. So I walked to a teller machine, and it was so cold. I swear, it was like 5 degrees, maybe not even that. It was getting colder and colder. And I put my card into the machine, and the machine was enclosed, so it was warm, in there. I used the machine, and this is in Colorado somewhere, a small town, 20 miles from where our car was, and it worked. And I was jumping for joy in the streets. People thought I was crazy. I was just, yes, because I was able to withdraw money and get something to eat. And my wife was crying because we were gonna miss the Christmas. Our family as they celebrate Christmas Eve. All the presents were in the cars, 20 miles away. And as I was walking back, I seen that there was people in a garage, like a GMC dealership, and they're having a party. So it was closed, but I knocked on the door, and they're telling me they're closed. But I said I need help, and so someone came to the door. I explained the story to them, and they're Christians, and so they let us in. And they actually sent the tow trucks out to get the car. The car still was under warranty. They said to have it fixed by morning. Make a long story short, we did get there on Christmas Day. We missed the nighttime, but they celebrated during the day, so it was all good. But it's amazing how God took care of us, having people there at those times. Every time, there was somebody that was there that the Lord sent to help us, even though there's difficulties. And there's so many stories I could tell, but I don't know how long this thing can even be, this interview. Anyway, so then, favorite story of someone getting saved. First of all, just not that long ago, my son came to me. This is my favorite story because it's my son, and he had gotten saved years ago, but he came and he just didn't have assurance. And after one of the services on Wednesday night, he came to my room and says, "Dad, I'm not sure. I'm 100% certain that I'm saved." And so I got to lead him to Christ. And what was real nice is when he said his prayer. I don't really like to have a generic sinner's prayer. This is my opinion. I like the people to, if they got saved, to pray to the Lord, if they received Jesus Christ. And so he prayed his prayers. It was a beautiful prayer. That was really touching to me, to hear him pray that prayer about, him wanting the Lord to use him and to walk in His will and to serve the Lord. And so that was one of my favorite stories. Another story. There's a woman. Her name was Janelle Tupuola. She was one of the Ram brothers had told me that his wife was coming to a fellowship, but she hates God. She's an atheist or an agnostic. She doesn't believe in God, but she's coming to the fellowship. So he said just to warn you, if she's doesn't want to talk about the Lord, if I bring it up. I said, oh, okay. So he told me that. Well, she came, and I started talking to her, and I noticed she was very easy to talk to. So I started to bring up the Lord, and saying that your husband's saying that you had a bad experience, or you're against the things of God. And she said, yeah. And she told me why, because she was abused as a child, and and she just had a lot of bitterness against the Lord. So I said, okay, and I said, well, and I started to talk to her, and she was listening. So I just kept witnessing to her, and I presented the whole plan of salvation, and she received the Lord. And so I asked her, I said, your husband had said that you weren't going to want to talk about it. And she said, yeah, that's true, because I wanted him to tell you that. But I also read my horoscope. She said, I read my horoscope today, and my horoscope said, someone's going to tell you something very important today. Listen to them. So she assumed that I was that person. So the way that the Lord can use things, and she had gotten saved and dramatically changed her life. It was a blessing. So another question was, an amazing way a financial need was met. Well, there's so many times. I mean, there's times where we're on deputation. We didn't have any money to get to our next meeting, and we didn't have money to pay our bills. There's one time a pastor I'm real close to, his name is Ronnie Mills, Trinity Baptist Church, just out of the blue asked me when I got to the meeting, first time I met him, and he said, hey, can I ask you something? How are you doing financially? And I said, oh, not good. And so I told him all the things that were due, our car payment, insurance. We just travel on deputation, a lot of times you're not expecting all certain expenses. And so he told me, he had me write down all the amount that I need to get myself current financially, and I gave him the number. He went straight to the church and told the secretary to write me a check for that amount. That was one of the times. Recently in the church, we were struggling through the COVID. A lot of people losing their jobs, and so we were struggling to pay our rent. Everything in Hawaii is really expensive, very expensive, rent and things like that. And so we weren't able to pay our rent. And that day, one family came to the church. They don't even come to our church anymore. And wrote a check and said, and give the church a check for $12,000. And then they got through the internet or through our app, two families that don't come to our church. One that used to come, and the other one that was one of our neighbors from before, gave offerings. And that day, I think I don't know how many thousands of dollars came in right that day that we needed to pay our rent, when our landlord was asking for it and we didn't have the money. And I don't handle finances, so the people just let me know if we're in trouble with financially in trouble over a bill. And they said that we can't pay our rent. What are we going to do? And I told them, oh, it's going to be all right. I'm just saying that to encourage them. I'm thinking, but it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And I know it's going to be all right, but still in the flesh, you're thinking, oh, how are we going to? But so we prayed, and that came in that day. So that was a blessing. So many stories I could tell, but this is going to be super long. I don't even know if this is too long already. Anyway, so a funniest missionary story or an event. What I'm going to do, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to do one more just in case it's too long, and I'll answer the last three. The funniest missionary story or event, the scariest experience on the field or on the road, and how God took care of us miraculously. So I'll do those after. I'll just see how this one turned out. Okay, so that's part one. You get part two. Thank you.